So this is still day one of IATEFL, and it's a very interesting presentation that I saw a couple of minutes ago. And it was about teaching intercultural competence, moving from English as a foreign language to English as lingua franca. Um, so, um, as we know now, English has become globalized, and a lot of our students are not learning English to speak to the typical native speaker in the UK or the US, but a lot of them will actually use it in international context with other non-native speakers. And there might be some native speakers as well. They'll use it as a lingua franca to get things done. Um, and the talk was geared at sort of business English teachers, but I think a lot of the things that were mentioned are applicable to other settings. So sort of traditionally, when we think of language and culture, and when we're teaching language, we think of sort of also projecting the English culture, whatever that means. But with now English being so global, um, that idea of projecting English culture becomes meaningless, really, and irrelevant for many students because they'll be much better off learning about how things are done linguistically in other countries and cultures, not necessarily in the English speaking world, because if they'll be dealing with, for example, Japanese businessmen, they need to know how Japanese people do business to avoid misunderstandings and to avoid offending them and to make sure that communication is moving on. So it's important that we make students aware of the differences between cultures. But a very important point that was mentioned in the talk as well is that we should try to get away from the essentialist idea of a culture, i.e., that, for example, all German people are organized, or because this creates more stereotypes. Obviously, it's not true. Some German people are organized, but not all of them. So it won't be true to say that all Japanese people do business in this way. So we need to be careful when we're teaching intercultural competence, but it is definitely a very important issue, and so when we're teaching our students now, it's not just about teaching them the language, but it's about teaching them how to get things done in English with speakers of other languages in English. So they'll need to be made aware of how in certain cultures people greet each other, how do they reject things, how do they make offers, how to write emails. There's a very good example of how the sort of the Western idea of writing an email, a typical business email, is very different from how this is done in many other parts of the world, especially in Asia, in countries like Japan, China, and Indonesia. So teaching our students to write emails in the traditional sort of Western way might actually come across as very rude or inappropriate to a Japanese person reading that email. So I think these are all the things that perhaps are still not that visible in course books, but that we need to take into account when we're teaching. Obviously, that's going to depend on the context and what our students are going to use their English for. But certainly, when we think of language and culture, I don't think it's necessarily teaching culture, as in teaching English culture, whatever that means, but actually teaching how to interact and appreciate different cultures and different languages, and how to interact in multilingual settings with English as lingua franca with people from all around the world of different cultures, and how to adapt the way you speak English to your interlocutor. So it's just another video from IATEFL, and there'll be more to come. Don't forget that the TEFL show also does podcasts. You can find us on iTunes and Stitcher, and also on our website, theteflshow.com.